So there's been some recent discoveries about the origins of Saturn's rings. Where did it come from, and what is the true age of the rings? Well, let's investigate the recent discoveries that suggest that the rings was formed from something and caused the changes of its moons. So my name is Chris. Welcome to the universe. As always, subscribe to the channel if you guys are brand new. Let's get started. So Saturn has some of the most expansive rings in the entire solar system that span about 280 kilometers wide or 174,000 miles. And the planet's rings are fairly thin. They typically are as thin as about 10 to 100 meters thick or 30 to 330 feet thick in most regions, although they appear as solid bands from Earth. If you look at Saturn from a telescope, as Saturn's tilt, um, there's times where Saturn's rings completely vanish, and it just looks like just a thin line, thin dark line. As you look at the telescope, say, "Oh, where the heck are those rings?" Well, actually, they are vanished because of the tilt, and although they appear as solid bands from Earth, they are actually composed of billions to trillions of individual particles that range in size from microscopic particles or pebbles that only span centimeters, or boulders that you find in the mountains, or big rocks that are the size of a house, or a small mountain chain that only spans a few meters. Most of the rings are mostly composed of 95 to 99% water ice. To the rest of it is about 1 to 5% rocky material composed from the shells of an old moon. Now, the structure of Saturn's rings range from A to G. D ring is the faintest and the innermost ring, and it's composed of just fine dust grains that are microscopic. C ring, relatively transparent. The B ring, the brightest, the widest, and most massive ring of a system. High concentration of icy particles that take up most of the majority of the composition. And the Cassini division is the famous division of all time. That's right there. And that gap is about 4,800 kilometers or 3,000 miles wide, separating the B and the A ring. And despite its name, it's not completely empty. You can see Saturn's moon, Mimas. And Mimas is the moon that has that giant crater, almost representing the Death Star. And the A ring is the outermost and bright major ring, constantly shaped by the small moon, Prometheus, and Pandora, whose gravity creates knots, strands, and streamers that ripple those rings. The F ring, a narrow braided ring just outside of the A ring. And I said it's, replenished by the debris of the small moons and their impacts gravitationally. The G ring, a faint ring composed mainly of microscopic ice particles. And the E ring, Saturn's largest and most diffused ring. And that's the entire ring structure from A to G. And also, there is composed in the famous gap. There is some small ringlets that are just very tiny, very microscopic. But it's mainly composed of broken bits of Mimas from Saturn's gravity that causes small, coarse, fine dust. Yeah, that forms the rings, because the rings are always being shaped by Saturn's pull and also the changes of the moon's orbits. So scientists think that those rings are 4.5 billion years old. Alongside Saturn was forming, it formed its own ring system just by pulling in material from that solar dust cloud. All the microscopic ices, the grains, pulling in objects as it's collecting. And that's what gave rise to those rings. But if you turn the tide, now there's new studies about just that the rings aren't as old as they think. They're much younger. The rings form at least 100 to 400 million years after the icy moon or a large comet wandered inside of Saturn's Roche limit and was torn apart by Saturn's tidal forces. And this was concluded by NASA's Cassini mission that suggests that those rings are relatively clean and bright, which could indicate that that ring system is very young. Because a ring shouldn't be that clean if it's 4.5 billion years old, because it can be due to structural damage as Saturn pulls in that ring, and they are very dusty and dirty. So there is a popular theory suggests that 100 to 200 million years ago there was an extra moon named Chrysalis. And see, what happened was that Chrysalis was orbiting slightly around Saturn pretty closely. And over time, Saturn's enormous gravity pulled Chrysalis closer and closer and closer to the point where it reaches Roche limit and pretty much defected the entire shape of Chrysalis, pulled it apart, and just broke up. And then all these little bits of dust and all the ice particles had pretty much formed this entire ring system around Saturn, and right there, what you get is the famous rings. But now there's some new theories suggest that Chrysalis and Saturn's largest moon, Titan, formed from a collision course that actually ruined Chrysalis and pushed Chrysalis towards Saturn and changed the other orbits of other moons. So let's talk about that. So Chrysalis and Titan kind of shared an orbit, possibly, because it was dictated by Saturn, obviously. And Saturn and Chrysalis got way too close to each other, and Chrysalis being slightly smaller than Titan suggests that Titan collided into Chrysalis, and its rocky material had got pulled in by Saturn's gravity and broke apart. And suggests that those moons that was also already in that system was ruined and was reshaped, and suggests that a moon, Hyperion. Now, Hyperion is a tiny asteroid like structure. It's not that big, it's pretty small. It's a potato, pretty much. And it's battered and it's covered in craters. But that suggests that in 2026, there was a theory paper that suggests that Hyperion was also in that entire play of how Saturn got its famous rings. So just that. Let's go to the whiteboard. So let's actually talk about 200 million years ago when the formation of Saturn's rings happened. But what did happen during that time? Well, there was the theory suggests that there was a gravitational resonance between Titan, Hyperion, and Chrysalis. But also there was a theory suggests that Hyperion, the reason why Hyperion is shaped as a lumpy potato with tons and tons of craters taken out of it, suggests that Hyperion was actually a lot bigger. It was rounder. So it suggests that there's also, remember, consider the following. Bill Nye the Science Guy. But anyway, this is my whiteboard. We explain a lot of our theories and suggestions. So here's Titan. So Hyperion, and then Chrysalis. Okay? Now, suggests that since there was alterations over billions of years of just changing positions of moons and other materials, suggest, yeah, there was a lot of chaos that happen because of the gravitational resonant dances. Now, let's talk about Hyperion just a little bit. So, Hyperion's current mass is only about 5.6 times 10 to the 18th kilograms. Now, Saturn's ring systems are only 1.5 times 10 to the 19th kilograms. Suggests that Hyperion alone couldn't make Saturn's rings, but suggests that there was more material because there was a sort of collision course between two other objects, that also shaped Hyperion, and also other moons that also were affected by Saturn's famous rings. All right, let's get to it. Now, suggests that so Hyperion is locked in a 4-3 orbital resonance with Titan, making a catastrophic orbital decay into Saturn is extremely unlikely, but suggests that 4-3 resonance. So 4-3 resonance is basically for every 4 orbits by Hyperion. 4 orbits by Hyperion for every 3 orbits made by Titan. So yeah, but Chrysalis may have had a different orbital resonance because it was orbiting maybe closer to Titan. So let's draw that. Titan, Chrysalis, and Hyperion. 4-3. And then there was a, that was a 3-3. Maybe a 3-2. I'm going to say 3-2 resonance between Titan. Let's just say that. And that orbital resonant dance, around Titan, because Titan is the largest moon of the entire Saturnian system and the second largest moon of our entire solar system. That means it is the big brother. It's the largest moon of the Saturnian system. Suggests that all those moons have been altered. Sorry. So it suggests that all those moons have been altered by Titan's gravity, but also Saturn's gravity, because most of the gravity comes from Saturn. But a lot of that in the entire club was mostly Titan, and suggests that it altered the orbits of Mimas, Iapetus, and other little moons that are orbiting inside nearly of Saturn's gravitational pull. So it suggests that these 3 had a gravitational lock in resonance. Suggests that there was the alterations of Saturn's own gravity and Titan's own gravity. Suggests that Titan kept pulling them closer and closer and closer to each other, to the point where, starting with Hyperion colliding into Chrysalis, that did a lot of that destruction, but also pushed Chrysalis and Proto-Hyperion together into Titan, bumped Titan over, and then altered Saturn's tilt. That's why Saturn gets that 26-degree tilt. It's because of that whole mess it created, because of the collision between these moons and other material. So it suggests that they bumped each other over, and then that sent that cord, which was Chrysalis, closer and closer to Saturn, where it broke up into pieces and then eventually formed those rings out of all of the other materials that from that collision course, and suggests that Hyperion got that shape because it was the remnant of that collision of what it once was. So yeah, that's a good theory about that. I do like that theory though, that there was a collision course between 3 lunar objects. But there was another theory suggests that Hyperion was actually formed just by 2 between Chrysalis and Titan itself. Again, it's the same theory as you add the third one into it. So again, with that orbital resonance and the gravitational shifting by Saturn as it and pulls and releases objects out of its own gravitational pull, suggests that again Chrysalis kept getting closer to Titan, and suggests that again they bonked each other, sent the remnants of Chrysalis towards Saturn's roche limit and formed the rings. But some of these materials that survived and was fast enough to escape Saturn's escape velocity, and that may have formed what we know as Hyperion. That's why gave it that shape, and it was constantly getting hit by all that debris. That's why it's made up, and it's literally just has covered in craters. Most of Hyperion's shell is ice, so just that those three objects were ice. So Titan's made of completely ice and methane. Chrysalis was mostly ice and frozen nitrogen, and Hyperion, its entire body is made of ice water too. So just that these icy objects that was also forming into that system as well, getting altered, had other collision courses into Titan, Chrysalis, Hyperion, and that entire system suggests that again their shifting orbits may have increased the chances of getting broken up by Saturn's immense gravity, formed those rings. And that's why those rings are so clean and refurbished and so young. So it suggests that Saturn's rings are about 200 million years ago. 200 million years old. It suggests that, yeah, dinosaurs were once roaming the planet when Saturn's rings were formed. Crazy. Crazy from how multiple collision courses may have subjected the formation of the rings. So thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video. And as always, subscribe to the channel if you guys are new. And as always, keep exploring. But also I do have a astronomy play, so go binge watch those.